if someone broke in while you were sleeping and was in your space, somewhere you feel safe, and they trashed things, they took things, they changed that home, imagine that being your body. And it can never get put back together the way it was. You heal, you work through it. It will never be the same. And so it's not just sex. The term sexual assault means any non-consensual act, including when a victim lacks the capacity to consent. The thing about statistics is that not all police stations and everything report them every single year, and not everybody reports the crimes that are in these statistics, so they are not all inclusive. So just keep that in mind. They're not lower than this, they're higher. These are from the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, and 43.6% of women, which is nearly 52 million, and nearly a quarter of men, 24%, or 27 million in the United States, experience some form of contact sexual assault in their lifetime. And that is 4 out of 5 Native women, 84%, which is just staggering, experience violence in their life, with 1 in 2, 56% being sexual violence. Native women are among the most vulnerable, suffering at the highest rates of sexual violence, intimate partner violence, stalking, which have lifetime consequences emotionally, mentally, socially, and physically.
Statistics from Safe Alliance, you have 1 out of 6 American women has been the victim of an attempted or completed sexual assault in their lifetime. In the U.S., about 1 out of 33 men has been the victim of an attempted or completed sexual assault in their lifetime, and you have 8 out of 10 sexual assaults are committed by someone who knows the victim.
Which is that's a really big thing to point out, that a lot of people think the rape and sexual assault you see in TV where, a stranger jumps out of the bushes is the majority of those sexual assaults, and it's not. It's mostly by someone that they trusted, family, friends, acquaintance, someone in power above them. So it's usually someone who knows the victim.
Yeah. And then at that too, you have 1 out of 5 undergraduate female students, which we barely, talk about, how you have college students that deal with the same sexual assault, experience a rape, or, through physical force, violence, or, incapacitation, so. And also you have the male figure as well in college that deals with the same thing with being sexual assault. We don't think of as, okay, we see the young men on campus, but they're also, you have the thing 18 to 24 years old, dealing with this as well. So
there may be men watching this that have been sexually assaulted and likely haven't ever told their story, just because men are way less likely to report than women. And it's hard because men, there is the stereotype of, they're men, so they can protect themselves, and it doesn't happen. I cannot stress enough that this is not just a women's issue. Mm-hmm. This is an everyone issue. From, children, teenagers, adults, elderly, male, female, non-binary, all of them are victims of sexual assault, and that's just one thing you have to keep in mind. You probably know someone who's been sexually assaulted, whether you're actually aware of that or not, and so it's good to keep in mind both how you react internally and externally if you do come across this information, especially if it's a close family member, a friend. It's difficult to hear that, and it's okay for it to be difficult for you to hear that. It's not an easy thing for someone to come forward with, and it's not an easy thing to hear. And it's extremely important to just know a good first response to someone you love who has been raped or sexually assaulted, and the impact on your response to them and how their ability to heal. Sometimes it's difficult to find the right words to say and know what to say. Some do's and don'ts for that response from a victim's perspective. So don't say it's just sex, because it's not, especially when, you know, it's there wasn't consent. If it's that sexual assault, there wasn't consent there. Don't tell them how they could have avoided it. Well, if you weren't drinking, if you weren't dressed like that, don't ask questions such as like, are you sure? Are you lying? Are you exaggerating? You know, are you sure you don't just regret it? Let them tell you what they want to tell you. Asking questions like, well, did you fight back? Will invalidate their experience if they didn't fight back. A lot of them aren't violent assaults. And so you don't have to fight back for it to be an assault. You simply saying, even if it starts as a consensual encounter, if it leads to something and you say, I don't want to right now, I'm uncomfortable, and they continue, that's sexual assault, that's rape. And so don't ask them if they fought back. It's difficult to come forward and say it in the first place, and then to hear those things like you're just over dramatizing it is, you know, it really cuts deep. It makes that trauma so much worse and so much harder to deal with. Try not to tell people to just get over it, or that, you know, time will, I know it's a lot of us try and say like time will heal and stuff like that. Just don't think about it, you know, just move on. It happens all the time, or other people have it worse than you. Those are all things that just make it so much more difficult for people to heal. Just validate them. Make them feel heard, listen, ask what you can do for them. Because a lot of the times they might not want to report. Don't try and push them into reporting. You can look up resources and stuff like that for them, and, you know, offer it, but don't push things. It's definitely a journey that each victim has to choose the pace of that. So just offer support. When it comes to reporting, definitely don't push them to report. Don't offer up, well, like if it happened to me, I'd report it. And please don't shame them into, you know, what if there's another victim? Don't you want to stop them? Because in all honesty, the likelihood of the rapist going to prison, it's not a comfortably high statistic. And so telling someone that they need to report it to protect other people puts an unfair burden on that person. And don't make them feel like you're going to, they need to retaliate against that person. A hard thing about sexual assault is, even though it's incredibly traumatic, the victim may not hate that person. Like, you would assume that you hate someone because of them doing this to you, but, you know, if it's a family member or a friend, you really want to assume they weren't trying to hurt you, you know, and that, you know, maybe this is normal, things like that. So don't push them that they have to hate that person, because that's, again, a journey that they have to decide on their own.
Do you think it could possibly happen in a relationship for us being
Absolutely.
going that far, you know?
That's a very common misconception that relationships, you know, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, and that they can't sexually assault you, they can't rape you, and that's not true. It does not matter your relationship status. If you were incapacitated, if you did not explicitly consent, if you said you were uncomfortable with it, all of those things, that was a sexual assault. And, like, you know, their feelings in that are completely valid. A hard thing to deal with is that, you know, they love you, they care about you, and that the sex is loving and caring. That's not it. It really is, if you're not giving consent, that it truly is about power and control. It's not just sex. It is about having that control over another human, and that doesn't take away from your experience. Don't feel like if you are in a relationship that they get to have that just because you're in a relationship. That consent isn't, you know, it's not above the relationship. The consent is first. every single time. Consent is mutual. Mutual consent is informed and freely given words or actions that show a willingness to participate. And consent is clear.
Yeah.
Clear consent can never be given by someone who is incapacitated by drugs or alcohol, asleep or unconscious. One party, both parties being on any sort of drugs or alcohol or anything cannot consent. It doesn't matter if before, when they weren't drinking, they said they wanted to have sex and now they're really drunk, and that's, you know, when you're going to do it. That's not consent. Someone who is incapacitated in any way cannot give consent. Stay tuned at the end of the video and look in the bottom. We will link a video about consent. We're going to go over a lot of misconceptions that surround sexual assault and rape. And so one really big one that I think makes a lot of headlines, makes a lot of stories, is that women often provoke sexual assault by how they act or dress, and that they ask for it, which I can say is something that angers me to my core when people say that women ask for it, because, I mean, as two women, like, I mean, we should get to dress how we choose. There's no outfit, there's no minimum amount of clothing that makes it okay for someone to put their hands on you and to completely ignore consent. That is not true. Nobody ever asks for it. And like, even if it starts as that consensual encounter and it moves into something that becomes uncomfortable that you are saying no to, you still aren't asking for it.
A lot of victims don't want to come forward because they think, then they know, more like almost know that they're going to be shamed, and it they shouldn't feel that way, you know. So I think from this aspect, we should be, as far as family and friends, should be there to say, hey, you know what, it wasn't your fault.
Feeling weak. A lot of men and women, and I'll say especially men, that's why they don't report, but they are ashamed for the assault. I mean, there's a lot of victim blaming. And here's another hot topic one, that women falsely accuse men of sexual assault all the time. Anytime there is a false or potentially false one, it makes headlines. And then, you know, people make it out to be that this happens all the time, and it doesn't. It's actually really rare for it to be a false report. It's just the hard thing about sexual assault is that it's a he said, she said. I know there are going to be people who have survived sexual assault watching this. You did not ask for it. Nothing you did asked for that. They knew what they were doing was wrong.
TVS provides services to Native and non-Native victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, and stalking.
Call anytime. We have a 24-hour hotline number. It's 866-966-0173. It's toll free. You can call at any point in time. It doesn't matter if it happened 5 minutes ago, if it happened last week. Give us a call. We can help with crisis intervention, safety planning, court advocacy. We want to help you feel safe, be safe, and everything is confidential. We won't minimize what happened to you. It doesn't matter if you've been married for 20 years or you just met someone. Abuse is abuse, and so please give us a call if you need help.